Hey guys, it's JR coming at you again with the second part of our series on the second annual Tournament of Madness held during the month of March. Let's get right at it today. Alright guys, let's start with the rules. The rules are pretty simple. We had heroes and villains picked by very smart people like Todd, Cam, and myself. They were randomized so we could have interesting matchups throughout the entirety of the tournament. And voting periods were for the first 48 hours, starting at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time on March 9th. This actually started on March 10th because it's the second half of the first round. So also want to just remind you to like, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know how we're doing on these videos, what heroes we might have left off, how you saw these matchups coming out, who you're excited to see matched up in the second round. So the very first one that we're going to start out with here is Hulk versus Captain America in the Marvel Superheroes bracket. And I believe firmly that based on the writing of Al Ewing in Immortal Hulk, Hulk pulled this one out. Captain America and Gauze didn't quite have enough this year, but it was fairly close right up to the end, and Hulk pulled it out 20-15. I think Hulk is going to be somebody to be reckoned with in the Marvel bracket this year, but he's got an interesting matchup in the second round. We will touch on that at the very end of the video, guys, so stay tuned. Alright, moving right along to the Indie Heroes bracket. We had Spawn versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. As we've said in the previous video, and we'll say a few times in this video, this is likely a matchup that last year we would have seen in the finals of the Indie bracket, but it just so happened this year that due to the randomizing of the seeding, we actually saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles versus Spawn in the very, very first round. It was extremely close right up until the very end. And with about 45 minutes left in voting, Spawn pulled it out by a single solitary vote. I thought we were going to have to call in the Todd father there for a second to get this one over the hump. But it looks like Spawn did pull it out. Shellheads, you're going to have to come a little stronger next year. Not full-blown calling you out, but you guys know that we were expecting a bigger number than 16 votes for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's all good. You guys got next year. We'll see how Shredder in the villains round, or in the villains bracket, fared a little bit later in the video as well. See if he might have pulled it out. Alright, staying in the Indie Heroes bracket, we've got Optimus Prime versus Lady Death. This was a matchup, strangely enough, that I'm 99% sure happened last year in our first rendition and had a very similar outcome. Lady Death had a fairly strong showing for the first day of voting, and then all the Autobots showed up like clockwork and put work in. Lady Death, folks who are sworn to the black, guys, got to come a little stronger next year. Who knows, maybe we can talk the Archfiend into casting a vote himself next year. Alright, let's move over to the DC Heroes bracket. And this was a matchup that I didn't think that I would see in the first round, but Shazam versus Superman. And this was not as close as I thought it would be, to be honest with you. The Big Blue Boy Scout pulled one out. Shazam, while on the rise, just did not have what it took this year. And we'll have to see how things fare for him in the future, whether he makes the bracket next year or not based off of this showing. I think he still has a solid chance of making the bracket next year, but this was a total drubbing by Superman. And, you know, I always find it interesting that people are trying to use logic in their reasoning for these votes and there was some interesting logic going on for people and why they voted for Superman over Shazam, or why they thought that Shazam should be the one to pull it out. Guess I'll have to check that out over on the Facebook page. Great conversation being had there. Alright, let's move to the bad guy bracket. And our bad guy bracket, the first matchup today is Thanos versus Megatron. And this came out about the way I expected, based off of the MCU, that type of thing, where Thanos was presented extremely well. Fandom really showed up strong, beating Megatron 18-9. Megatron had a solid showing. Unfortunately, it was not his year. I think it was a poor seeding matchup for him, honestly. I think that there were some people who would have liked to have voted for Megatron, but in this matchup simply could not pull the trigger for him. Pun fully intended. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be here all week. Maybe next week too, if Todd remembers to record with me. Just kidding there. Let's move on here in the bad guy bracket. Just a little further down, we have Dr. Doom versus the Batman Who Laughs. This is Old Guard versus New Guard. And in this Old Guard versus New Guard matchup, Dr. Doom won handily. And it was probably not very close from the very beginning, to be honest with you. But Batman Who Laughed got a solid amount of votes. But we may be looking the same way with him as we were with Shazam. Maybe not necessarily a strong enough showing to appear next year. But I think we've got some interesting ideas for next year's tournament already as well, based off of some feedback from folks in the community. So honestly, we're not even done with this. We're not halfway done with this year's tournament, and I'm already excited for next year's tournament. So anyway, Dr. Doom beats Batman Who Laughs 17-8. It was a pretty fair representation of the way I thought it would go. But there again, I have to admit, I'm probably part of the old guard, so not necessarily a surprise to anybody that I would have probably been rooting for Dr. Doom in that matchup. Alright guys, so this brings us to the portion of the video that's a bit different from the first half. We're going to review some of the matchups for the bracket in the second round. Just really quickly go through them and maybe bring up some interesting notes on them. So our first matchup there in the second round that we're going to look at is Marvel Superheroes bracket is Wolverine versus Iron Man. That is an extremely interesting matchup to me, because Wolverine is a top seed and arguably could be a top seed, but hasn't had a very strong showing at the box office recently. Logan was the last movie that he had. Great movie, been several years ago. Let's see if his popularity has waned any since then, or if Iron Man and Wolverine are going to put up a great fight. Alright, next on the list is Thor and Venom. Of course, you guys know I am a huge Venom fan. Thor should put up an extremely big fight here. And this is going to be interesting to me because of the Donny Cates factor. Donny Cates writing some new Thor, was previously on Venom. Interesting matchup, no matter how you slice that. Next is Spider-Man and Hulk. This is going to be a battle, guys. This is classic. Spider-Man versus the Hulk. Who you got? Tell me in the comments below whether you think that Spider-Man's got this one or Hulk will have it in the bag. Again, you guys kind of know the way that I lean personally, but don't let that affect your votes. Cast the vote for who you want to win in that matchup. Last in the Marvel bracket is Deadpool versus Daredevil, and that's going to be an extremely good matchup as well. Let's see who's going to win there, the Merc with the mouth or Daredevil. You know, it could be close. This one could be closer than you expect. If I'm being honest with myself, I do expect it to be the closest of those four matchups. All right, let's move over to Indie Heroes bracket. And we're going to start out with Hellboy versus Rick Grimes. Alright, this is really going to boil down to, in my opinion, whether or not you are already on board with one of these or the other. If you're already on board and riding with Rick Grimes, you're going to stick with Rick Grimes. If you've been enjoying the direction that Hellboy has been going, that's the way you'll end up voting on this one. And I don't blame you at all. That it would be a good way to go. Alright, the next matchup is very interesting. The all Autobot matchup of Bumblebee versus Optimus Prime. Again, this is going to be one of those, whether you fall in the camp of Bumblebee or Optimus Prime. I think there is going to be a bit of old guard, new guard here, based on whether you grew up with the comic books or whether you grew up with the movies. That will kind of dictate which way you might lean. Alright, the very next matchup is Rick and Morty versus Spawn. Again, a bit of old versus new here. Are you rooting for Spawn and the Todd Father, or are you rooting for Rick and Morty, the juggernaut from the Cartoon Network? The next one that we've got here is The Tick versus Bloodshot. And with the recent success of the Bloodshot movie and some of the early reviews that I've heard from friends that it was a good movie, this one could be a very interesting matchup. The Tick may have met his match. Regardless of how hard that I push for the Tick, this may end up being the one that he bows out of the tournament. Again, I'm very interested to see what you guys think about some of these matchups. Alright, let's move over to the DC bracket. And the DC bracket, our very first matchup is Teen Titans versus The Flash. This is going to be interesting because those of us who have the DC streaming service may end up favoring the way that the Teen Titans were depicted. People who are only following the Arrowverse on the CW, you may lean a little more towards The Flash. This is a good one, but this is going to kind of really be, in my opinion, determined by who actually has watched Teen Titans on the DC streaming service. The next one is interesting to me because it's Super Family versus Bat Family. It's Superman versus the Huntress. But instead of the Huntress winning in first round, Superman had to win in the first round. So again, an interesting twist on things. If the first round is any indication, the Huntress may have an uphill battle, unfortunately. But again, don't let that stop you from voting for her. If you think she should win that matchup, you cast your vote for the Huntress. I'll be very interested to see how that plays out. In the next matchup, again, Super Family versus Bat Family. Power Girl versus Batman. So again, an interesting juxtaposition there of swapping those two out that way. I'm interested to hear how you guys think that should play out, and how you're looking at voting on that. Alright, our last matchup here is going to be Wonder Woman versus Green Lantern. I kind of feel as though maybe Wonder Woman has a fairly substantial edge, but you never know. These votings have surprised me in some ways in the past. So I'm interested to see how you guys feel about that matchup. It definitely is interesting. I think that would actually even make for a great Elseworld story. If anybody over at DC is listening, you might consider that. Alright, the last of our four brackets that we're going into is the Bad Guys bracket. And this one has, again, some very interesting matchups. Darkseid versus Deathstroke. Now, as you guys are aware, Cam helped us out with putting these brackets together. I witnessed the randomization. This is not, in fact, him goofing on the system. Deathstroke came up number 1 seed for the Bad Guys bracket, so that's where he's at. He's got a stiff matchup here with Darkseid. It could be an uphill battle, but there again, stranger things have already happened, so don't Don't be shocked if somehow Deathstroke pulls that out. All right. Doctor Doom versus Shredder. Shredder has already moved on to the second round, so Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans have reason to rejoice. He was already there. You guys still have hope. Shellheads unite against those who voted for Doctor Doom. This could be a really, really good matchup here. Don't sleep on this matchup. I actually expect it to go down to the wire. All right, next is Harley Quinn versus Thanos. Two extremely popular characters, and in some ways popular to the same people. So again, I think this is going to be really interesting in whether folks are willing to vote for Harley Quinn or Thanos. I'd like to hear some reasons why one might vote for one or the other. So again, really great matchup there in the second round for the bad guys. And then lastly, the World Eater Galactus versus the Joker. Really, honestly, let's be real, the Joker is a heavy favorite, but Galactus had the best showing of any single character versus another in the first round. This could be a sleeper matchup as well, as far as I honestly don't know what to expect for folks voting for Galactus. They may have just not had the Joker to vote for, so they voted for Galactus. I don't know. Anyway, if you are a Galactus fan, I hope you do show up and vote, because I think it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle for him against the Joker. Alright guys, we're going to wrap this one up. I want to remind you, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave us some comments. Let us know how we're doing. We appreciate you sharing your time with us. And join in the conversation over at Facebook. There will be a link in the description to get to the page to make sure that your votes are counted. And again, guys, be good or be good at it. We'll see you later.